Alyssa is graduating this semester from UH with a double major in Management Information Systems and Marketing. She currently serves as an IBC Vice President and is on the Business Night Committee. She loved her time at Scheidler thanks to all of the amazing opportunities that the college has offered, including our PACE events. We're so happy to have Alyssa here, and I'd like to introduce Alyssa.
Hi guys. So I'm part of IBC, which if you don't know is the Inner Business Council here at Scheidler. So we kind of connect all of the business clubs. And now I'd also like to introduce Tyler. So he is a business owner and award-winning sales and marketing leader. Tyler Saenz has a passion for developing and building business relationships, facilitating the design of business solutions and innovation, and a meticulous adherence to technicalities. Tyler is a natural leader with entrepreneurial spirit and a passion for adventure travel. Professional by nature, growing by experience, and highly motivated to achieve. As the CEO of ParkLink, overseeing the company roadmap, strategy, and growth marketing efforts, Tyler takes responsibility for the overall vision and strategic direction of the company. When he is not working to solve Hawaii's parking problems, you can find him jumping out of airplanes, diving with sharks, or snapping nature photographs. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So Tyler, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what kind of drew you to Hawaii?
Sure. I mean, just kind of come from a typical middle-class family with, simple roots. I've always been kind of fascinated with how technology works, and, started working at Radio Shack as a kid, and I guess I need to admit to being like a Elon Musk fanboy, I'd say. I coming from like a simple town, I think a place like Hawaii was one of the most amazing and exotic places in the world to me. So, I started telling people that I was going to live in Hawaii someday, and was able to make that happen about 10 years ago by getting an inter-office transfer at one of my first marketing jobs. And since then, have the best 10 years of my life out here. There's just a lot to do here in Hawaii. I think it all started out with a skydiving trip. I had a girl ask me, she said, "Oh, do you want to go skydiving?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, we'll go in a couple of days. That sounds great." Or, "We'll go in a couple of years. That sounds great." She said, "Okay, we'll have an opening Saturday at 9 a.m. And I just remember being like, I didn't mean yes. I thought we would be going to do it in a couple of years. And you can't really back out of a skydiving trip when a girl's asking to go skydiving, And I just remember getting to the plane and just being absolutely terrified to go up in that thing. And I'd always thought about skydiving my whole life. Like, when you get up in a plane, are you going to have the confidence to run towards the door and jump out, right? And that feeling of when I went out the door is something I've never had before. Just, you forget about everything else in life for 30 seconds. Nothing else matters. And I think that feeling became like an addiction. And when we were leaving, I remember looking up and seeing this glider plane. And he was like flipping up in the air and rolling. So we came back and did that a year later. I started flying glider planes, and that led to flying stunt planes with one of the 4 founding fathers of Pacific Aviation Museum. And that led to going over the 2017 Kalapana lava flow, and I got to roast a filet mignon over the hot lava. And I don't know, it just became an adventure. And this whole state is just a place to go have a bunch of fun adventures. So like I said, it's been the best 10 years of my life out here, and looking forward to seeing what we can do with the next 10 years.
Yeah, so you mentioned you kind of came over here from a sales and marketing position. So how did you find your entrepreneurial spirit through that?
I think we all kind of have that, when you're growing up as a kid, you see people with a lemonade stand, right? I think for myself, I remember building birdhouses with my grandpa in the garage. So we get this drill with the circular saw thing, and we drill into birdhouses. And I remember selling those to the neighbors. And then I had a lawnmower, and I'd mow all the lawns for $5. But after a while, there's only, you could only mow so many lawns in a day with a push mower. So I saved up the money, got a riding lawnmower, and then told all my friends, "Hey, we aren't playing Zelda this weekend. You're going to come over and help build birdhouses." And so we'd build the birdhouses, put them in the back of the trailer of the lawnmower. I'd drive up to go mow the people's lawns, leave the trailer out there. They'd pick out the birdhouse while I was mowing the lawn. So, I mean, even as a kid, it was just finding a way to scale things up. And, I guess when I got into corporate job, it was easy to see marketing had some of the biggest returns in revenue for a corporation. So, we focused on repeatability and scalability. And I think being able to kind of carry that over to my own thing, gave me the confidence to transfer those skills over to my own.
Building off that, what advice do you have for like students or anyone interested in pursuing entrepreneurial ventures, but concerned about straying away from their current career?
Think twice. Grass is often greener where you already stand. Everybody wants to go and work for themselves and wake up when they want to wake up. And I guess what I would say, like, one of the hardest things of starting the business was I already had a good paying job, right? I already had a beautiful person I was in love with, and it was very difficult to like stray away from those things. So if you have an idea, if you want to start your own thing, I would say do it sooner than later, because the more successful you become, the more money you make, the harder it's going to be to kind of stray away from those things, right? It's very hard to stray away from a good paying job to jump onto something that you don't know is going to work, right? Especially if you have a kids, family, other responsibilities in life, it just gets harder and harder as time goes on. So if you have an idea, I would say pull the trigger and go for it now. If you already have a good job, I think you really got to weigh the options of, what you really want in life, and don't try and burn yourself out on two things, because sometimes you might get burnout before you make it to starting your business. Start now. That's my best advice.
So for you starting now, what was your inspiration behind ParkLink?
In 2008, I had a really bad car accident, and I flipped my truck over 3 times at 70 miles an hour. I broke my neck in 3 places, and I had to put a titanium plate back here in my neck and fuse 4 to 5. I was supposed to be a quadriplegic and, no use of arms or legs or anything. And when I got out of the accident, I was terrified to be in a car. I got in my car, my mom picked me up from the airport. We go to drive, and I just freaked out after like 10 feet of driving. And I ended up taking a bus everywhere for the next year and a half, buy groceries, everything, And my grandfather, he was in the military. He's like, "Oh, why don't you go get one of those Hummers?" Oh, that's ridiculous. It's what, Arnold drives. And a couple months later, I came home with a Hummer, and I loved it. And then I moved to Hawaii, and you can't park it in 90% of the places out here. It's too tall, it's too big, right? And so naturally, I racked up like $5,000-6,000 in parking tickets, if I want to be generous. I've been towed at least 50 times on this island. And after doing that so many times, I parked in somebody's driveway one day. I had to get to work, right? And I parked in the driveway. I left a note and it said, "Hey, I had an emergency. Can you call if you need me to move?" And he calls me. I get to the place, and it's one of the employees I work with. I'm like, "Dude, you walk to work. Let me just park in your driveway." He's like, "No, so I'll give you $80. I said, "Okay." So I'm thinking, okay, well, I had 2 parking spaces when I first moved to Hawaii. I wonder how many people have an open parking space in Waikiki that they aren't using. They want to make $100-200 on it. I go into Craigslist and I find all these homes around UH renting out like driveways for the students at UH, right? And I find out there's more unused parking driveways in Waikiki than there are used. Why isn't somebody like creating an Airbnb or Uber or something to link these guys together, right? We're all driving around in circles looking for a parking spot when there's plenty of them right there. So I guess that's kind of what started the business was, frustration of not being able to find a parking spot and turning that into an app and website where you could find that parking spot,
So you started it in 2016, and then 4 years later in 2020 kind of made your launch. So what occurred during that 4 years, and how did you kind of prepare for your launch and your business model kind of change over that time?
I think that goes back to complacency. I had a job at one of the largest corporations in the world, making 6 figures and in love with a beautiful person. And it's very hard to, very easy to get complacent with something like that and not to want to branch out. And I knew ParkLink was always there, but it was really the year of the pandemic where we were all forced to not be at work, not be at school, not be at places that we normally go. That gave me the chance and the time to focus 100% on the business, Yeah.
So you kind of left your 9-to-5 job and then committed full-time to your business. So how has that transition been, and how has it impacted your business?
I worked with a lot of really great people. Clients were great. Who am I kidding? I absolutely love it. Yeah, it was the best day of my life. Putting in that notice and leaving and doing what I want to do. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't take it back for anything. I'd make 1/3 of the money working for myself rather than working for somebody else.
So parking kind of requires space in Hawaii, and we are often very limited on our space here, as you know. So how do you think your application will help reimagine and solve our parking problems?
So there's a study done here in Honolulu called the Walker Parking Study. And a guy named Donald Shute, that's like the godfather of parking. He actually came here to UH a few months ago and did a speech on parking. And they found that more than a third of the traffic that you see driving around a place like Waikiki, downtown, or Ko'olina have already reached their destination. They're just looking for a parking spot, right? So that's causing 20 minutes of driving around in circles, and it's causing congestion, CO2 emissions. So, you know, creating something where you have a connection, like a GPS connection, where you could see a map of all the available spots right now, and you can pay for it, and then a GPS right to it, cuts down on CO2 emissions, congestion, frustration, overspending.
You mentioned earlier that like it kind of started from you parking in your coworker's garage space. So how has it evolved from just people's homes and garage spaces?
We don't do driveways anymore. We had like 3 or 4 driveway people call a tow truck and tow out their own people that was in the driveway because they forgot that they listed it on the website. So the other piece of it is there's only so many driveways where parking is needed, right? So the first transition was a church. The church said, hey, we've got open parking 6 days a week and we could use the extra money, right? So having a church come on 6 days a week was kind of the first breakaway of a driveway. And then I was telling that story to a hotel GM, and he said, hey, Tyler, why don't you bring it to the hotels? I said, why would you want a bunch of people parking at your hotel that aren't staying there, mucking up the parking garage and all that? So we got 600 parking spaces, and 250, 300 are sitting empty. So the parking revenue is one thing, but it's driving traffic to my restaurants and retail shops of 200-300 people a day that wouldn't have been walking by those places before. So it kind of transitioned into a traditional, you know, larger parking company of you know, more commercial parking rather than the driveways. I would say that's the transition.
How is it? I know a lot of other parking lots here are owned by like the government, for example. So are there ever like future plans to also partner with kind of public organizations, or do you prefer to stay more with private organizations?
I think there's ups and downs of dealing with it. Like when you deal with anything city or government, you have to go through an RFP process, and you have to have all these special insurances that meet their requirements. You have to have, it's very different than dealing with a private company. But the long-term goal is to definitely work with the state and work with the city, because what we've done is we've created something a little bit different than what everybody else has out there, right? Parking apps are everywhere. We've created something that just came out 2 weeks ago that's a multi-tiered parking system where somebody from out of state, we can instantly identify out of state, in state, where you live in a community, and charge parking rates accordingly. So example, if you're from Idaho, you might pay a standard rate. If you're from Hawaii, you might pay $1 rate. And if you live in a community that's approved to get the additional discount, like you live in Ko'olina, so you can park in Ko'olina for free. So having different tiered parking rates. And I think having a place like Hawaii, you know, it's very community driven, very close knit community. And it also is based on a tourism driven economy, right? So having an option where you go into a restaurant, like where else in the world do you go in and they have a word for the actual discount other than local discount? Here we actually have like Kama'aina discount. It's a thing here. So if we could offer that in the parking world as well, Kama'aina discount everywhere you go, I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of the others, and something that really allows us to work with state and city entities.
That's really cool. Do you like, so for your pricing strategies, do you want to share a little bit more about that and how you decide to price, like maybe the monthly and or daily hourly rates?
It's all based on supply and demand. And I think that's one of the biggest things, going back to your question about the city and state, that they're missing is a lot of the prices for parking are set by ordinance, and they can't go up and down based on demand, right? So you have the same price on a Friday night as you do on a Tuesday afternoon, which doesn't really make sense in a world of parking in supply and demand, right? So we base our prices on demand. So when it gets busier, like let's say a lot reaches 90% occupancy, prices automatically go up. Reaches occupancy below 30, prices are going to go down. So having the ability to change the pricing based on demand is how we base our pricing.
And then how does ParkLink kind of generate revenue? Is it from the people paying for the parking spots, or is it the people like renting out their parking spots that absorb that cost?
Well, we do a split on revenue. So, every transaction that goes through, that money gets divvied up. So Parkland gets a portion of it and the property owner gets a portion of it. So that's how we pay for all of our expenses. The difference is the traditional company is going to charge a management fee for all the people that are working there, the machines, the gate arm, the pay station. We take all of those costs out of our portion. So we pay all of the costs.
So what kind of resources did you use to kind of like help with your pricing strategy and just starting a business in general?
I think luckily I already had a decent job. So I had some money saved up, put all of that money into the business. When that ran out, I cashed out my 401k. I put all that into the business. When that ran out, I took out every credit card I could and I put all of that into the business. All in. And learning what to do with that was places like this. Minoa Innovation Center had a big part in it. SBA, working with smaller companies like Dev League and Russell. There's a lot of opportunity out there to learn from people that have been doing it here in Hawaii. And I would recommend taking advantage of anything you can, especially with this new program you guys are talking about. It looks like you guys are building a new building specifically just for entrepreneurship here at UH, which I think is exciting to everybody.
You mentioned earlier too, there was like some key connections you had at the beginning of starting your business. So how was that in gaining those connections and then moving forward?
Yeah, I got really lucky in the beginning. I called up, so there's a company called Dev League here where they develop developers. And so I called them up and I said, hey, I have this business. I have a parking app and I want to see if you have anybody that can help me out being a developer, graphic designer. And the guy who runs it, he says, you got to be kidding me, man. I said, what do you mean? He says, we just graduated our cohort last week and the winner of the cohort built a parking app for Honolulu. Why don't you come on down and meet them? So I met them over at Mick and I hired them on right away, Mika Dumont and Nick, and they were the first 2 employees at Parklink. Unfortunately, Mika got an offer at Microsoft for a very nice 6-figure job, so she wasn't with us much longer, but that was kind of the start of it. So a lot of it was luck and just knowing the right people, making the phone call at the right time.
So I also noticed that kind of recently, a year after launching, you expanded into Maui. So how has like that expansion been, and like any growing pains with that or challenges?
Difficult, because I like to go see all the spots. I drive to all the parking locations, and like as creepy as it sounds, I like to watch people pay for parking. And so I'll watch them, right? And they walk up to the sign. In the beginning, this was one of the first things. Like they walk up to the sign and they go to pay for parking. They pull out their phone. 1 minute goes by, 2 minutes goes by, 3 minutes goes by. They get back in their car, drive away. Oh, it's like, what is going on? 3 minutes is too long to pay for parking, right? And especially when you see them spend 3 minutes and then get back in the car and drive away, that drives you nuts, right? So what is going on? What's taking so long? So we had to get rid of the creating an app or downloading the app. Nobody wants to download an app when you're trying to go to dinner. We had to get rid of creating an account. Nobody wants to create. I'm just trying to pay for parking. Let me go. So little things of watching customer behavior in the lots was something I was used to here in Hawaii. Open up a location on Maui, I can't like run over to the lot and watch people pay for the parking, right? So it drove me nuts having a location over on Maui and not knowing what was going on 24 hours a day, which is what led to our enforcement portal of solar powered cameras, watching what was going on. So now I had my first solar powered camera on Maui. I could pan left, right, up, down, see what was going on over there. And then we installed 9 more so I could see every little corner of everything going on, right? Yeah, it was a growing pain that led to our entire enforcement portal and how we run our camera system.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So now at the house, I don't have to like drive to all these different locations. You just see everything going on.
So you mentioned like going to the parking lots and sitting and kind of watching people and their growing pains of maybe not downloading the app or making an account. How has like that impacted like your perspective on your business, and have you done anything else with consumers to reach out to them?
Yeah, it's just like making it as easy as possible to use. So example, like if you paid for a parking spot on your phone and now you go to another Parklink location and you go to pay for a parking spot through a text, it's already gonna know who you are, right? It's gonna say, hey, are you using your license plate DZ2515? Yes, if no, type your new license plate number. You don't have to go back through the process of payment. You don't have to go through all these things. It's very, very seamless. So you can go from location to location without having to redo everything.
That's really cool. So coming from your marketing background too, have you used this to help your business grow or like publicize and advertise your business? And what has that looked like for you?
I mean, we we hire very talented PR writers, web developers, graphic designers, a lot of things that, you know, a marketing team would do at a larger corporation. Our pro formas, our proposals are very well researched and very well designed. And, you know, I think that, I think, like I said before, marketing efforts a lot of the time return some of the biggest revenues. So, sorry, I got a little lost on that question. Yeah.
So like kind of how do you use like marketing to reach out to like possibly like new lots or like consumers to make them aware of your application?
A lot of it is through the PR. So when we write a press release, we're targeting certain editors and certain journalists, right? And we know what type of magazines, what news stations those are going to be on to target. Like Pacific Business News is going to be more targeted towards business owners, right? You don't have your typical 16-year-old popping open Pacific Business News and like, what's the new, you know, $30 million condo that was bought last week? Nobody, right? It's a different client, right? So, you know, when we want to get a story out about, hey, how do you use ParkLink and how are Carmina rates different than out-of-state rates? We want that on a live news 6 p.m. so everybody can see it and say, oh, that's amazing, let's go use parking. But if I want to show a new feature of how we make it easier for a lot owner to sign up or make more revenue, that needs to be in something like Pacific Business News, the people that own the businesses, the people that own the land. So, you know, press releases being targeted towards what media source you want them to go out to.
It's like where you're looking for your target audience and
Yeah.
where you kind of want to develop that.
Absolutely.
Cool. So going off that, do you think ParkLink is going to expand to more places outside of Hawaii in the future? And where are you kind of hoping the market goes next?
Yes. Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Seriously. Kind of mean that as, you know, you say it as a joke, but I mean, there's no gate arm, there's no $100,000 gate arm, there's no $10,000 machine. It's an aluminum sign, a solar powered camera, and revenue starts tomorrow. There's no reason why we can't have this every single place.
That's a really good idea. So you mentioned like bringing in your solar powered camera. So how has like been adapting to like new technologies that come out then for your application, and where does that fit in?
That's the best part of it, is like finding out, you know, okay, so somebody has a problem. Like we had one of our property owners in the beginning, he had a list of 300 people paying monthly. The second half of his month was calling all the people that didn't pay in time, calling tow trucks, dealing with bounce checks. Like it's just a nightmare. So we're like, okay, well, let's create auto pay. And so now on the first of every month, it hits their credit card. And that just took all of that weight off of our shoulders, all the weight off of his shoulders. Any little change to make it easier for the property owner and make it easier for the driver is you know what we focus on. Yeah, just trying to make it extremely easy to use and easy profitability.
So how do you kind of like enforce rules and regulations, like your parking permit violations, and like what do you guys kind of work with to deal with those instances?
So because we do all enforcement by license plate, we don't have like a tag that you put in your window or up on your rearview mirror. It's all done by license plates. And when you pay for parking, you put in your phone number. So let's say that you have overstayed your welcome. You didn't pay for parking long enough, right? You overstayed. Our parking liaisons all have access to a phone number, give you a call or a text and say, hey, you're over your time. You want to up your timing rather than giving you a parking ticket or having you towed. Okay. If you've never paid in the ParkLink system, we have occupancy cameras and license plate recognition, license plate readers. So when the car drives in, it's going to read a license plate. If they go pay for parking, nothing happens. But if no action is taken within 15 minutes of that license plate going by the entrance, it pings our enforcement portal. And so there's a whole group of people that are driving around, kind of like a Uber Eats, but for parking. And they got a bunch of citations in their pocket, right? So they get a ping and they drive over to this location, put a citation on this car. So it's kind of like having parking attendants at every single location 24/7, but without requiring them to actually be on location all the time.
Got it. That's cool. So you kind of use technology in a way to like track down people that might not be paying for your parking and then give them tickets. So how is like, are people receptive to like paying for the tickets, or is there like a legal enforcement behind that?
So I don't know how much I should say in this story, but all right. It all started as an accident. And thank you to whoever that accident was. We used to just put a thing on the windshield that said, hey, we're tracking your license plate. If you do it again, we might tow you. And a guy called one day, he said, hey, I don't want to be towed. I might forget it to pay again. Can I just pay you and you remove it from the system? I'm like, that'll be $10. And so I charged him $10 and I removed his violation. And I thought, okay, well, maybe if they have 3 violations in the system, then we'll tow them. Who's going to pay a violation? I don't want to say the number, but a lot more people pay a violation than don't pay a violation. And that's all depending on what you write on that violation, how you work with car rental companies, how you work with just the public in general, and how that ticket is written. And I think the other problem is, like, when you get a parking ticket from a police officer, it's a little yellow sheet of paper and there's no proof of where exactly it was. And was that, like, $11 million last year were lost in Honolulu because the cop wrote down the wrong license plate number. Like, it just seems like, why wouldn't they, like, our enforcement report, if I go give a ticket, our liaisons go to give a ticket, they hold out their camera, it's going to read the license plate, pop it in there, take an HD photo of their car. So now when somebody goes to pay the violation, it's going to show them a picture of their car, the license plate, the day, the time. It wasn't you, I think it was. So having something like a backup, it's just a little bit easier when you have license plate recognition. I don't know where the question was. I went off on a tangent there again, but yeah, that's how we started the tickets. It was all by an accident, by a guy just trying to get rid of the ticket one day. And yeah.
Do people still try to get rid of tickets from you guys?
Of course. They say, I didn't know it was paid parking, or I didn't see the sign, or I don't think it's fair. And, it's definitely a question we get asked often. Yes.
How do you guys kind of handle people like negative reviews? Like if someone went to go park and their parking spot was taken, or just like any negative feedback, how do you handle that as like a business owner?
So what we have on the receipts is, if somebody's in the spot, there's an actual button that says someone's in my spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will ping our enforcement portal. The parking liaison picks up the phone. They already know where this person is calling from. They turn on the camera to that location, say, sir, I can see your parking spot is full, but if you turn around you 3 spots back, there's a parking spot you can park in right there. Okay. So we can redirect those people to another parking spot pretty quickly and easily. What was the second part of your question?
How do you handle like maybe negative feedback that you've gotten from consumers?
Most of it is misinformation. Like, people will go onto Facebook or onto Instagram and talk about, I think we were most recently blamed for a parking ticket for the war in Ukraine. We've been, they say it's in cahoots with Department of Health. We've heard FBI, but we've heard all these it's mostly people just misinformed and don't know what's going on with the parking that go on. So we'll typically message those people directly on Facebook or directly on Instagram, explain what's going on. And sure enough, the next day they go paste on their Facebook, hey, I had a misunderstanding. They reached out to me. This is what happened. We're able to fix it that way before it gets, out of control. But for the most part, we don't really have a lot of bad reviews that are uncontrollable, because most of the things, like I said, are misunderstandings,
Mm-hmm.
or we just message them directly and let them know how it works.
So you mentioned too that you have people on sites that will drive around, get alerted, if someone drives in, doesn't pay. How is like that process? Do you have someone like 24/7, or is it hourly based?
So we have a team of people that are parking liaisons that will see the locations, and then also a team of people that answer the phones. They're the same exact team, just on different times. So if they're working at a lot, they might be paid an hourly rate of, just throw out, let's say $20 an hour they're paid. If they answer the phone when they're not on the time, it's very hard to expect somebody to answer a phone when they're with their kids doing their normal lives, right? But if I hire a call center that doesn't know anything about my locations, the person's going to say, hey, someone's in my spot. And the other person's going to say, I don't know what to tell you, right? So you got to have people that know what's going on. But how do you pay those people outside of the regular times? just paying them a lot of money. Paying them 75, 80 bucks an hour to answer the phone calls, right? So if they can answer those phone calls for a quick 2-3 minute phone call, we now have a 24/7 call center of people that have been to every location they're on the phone with, know how to work the system, do refunds, edits, work the cameras. Everybody involved is involved 24/7. And it's a lot to ask of the employees, which is why we pay them very well.
Got you. So how have you grown your team over the years to incorporate that, and as well as like your company culture?
I mean, it's like an automated digital company. There's not a lot of, we're growing slowly and steadily. We have grown from 2 employees 8 months ago to now we have 13 employees. So we are growing. But for the most part, it's an automated system. So it's very scalable without having to hire a whole lot of bodies.
And then what would you say like is your company culture, what you look for in your employees that would make them a good fit with ParkLink?
Ownership.
Ownership.
Yeah. I mean, you giving everybody a piece of it. Like, okay, so we have a suggestion box in our Slack channel, right? So if a parking liaison sees something in the daytime, a sign that could be designed differently, a feature in the phone, in the enforcement portal, a customer that gives them feedback, they can all submit this into a suggestion box. If that suggestion gets approved, they get a bonus 25, 50 bucks on their paycheck, plus they get recognized of implementing that new into our program. So everybody having a sense of ownership is very important to me.
That's really cool. You also noted earlier that there's like impacts on the environment that it has by people just driving around, wasting time, looking for parking. And that's a very big trend, at least in our society right now, with many businesses. So what does like ParkLink kind of mean for them, and how do you communicate your positive environmental impact?
It all kind of goes back to the congestion thing of it, right? So if a third of the cars are driving around looking for a parking spot, wasting 20 minutes of circling, that's congestion, that's CO2. So by providing that ability to book in advance on the map view is already cutting down on congestion CO2. To take it a step further, I mean, ParkLink, every single transaction that we go through, we take a 1% of it and we contribute it to buying renewable energy and removing CO2 from the atmosphere through companies like Project Vesta, which is a green sand initiative on Big Island. But even the people that we work with, like some of the nonprofits, all of the money for one of our locations is going towards vegetated bioswales and curb cuts to redirect all the stormwater runoff that's going into the bay. So all the cars park, right? You got oil and gas drips all over. Storm comes, washes it all into the bay. Well, it's 1,000 parking spots washing oil and sediment into the bay every single time there's a storm. So they're taking that money, they're putting vegetated bioswales, curb cuts, and redirecting that water into a place where it's not going to go into the bay and kill the reef. So, you know, we help take cars off the road. We help reduce congestion. We put a portion of our revenue towards removing, CO2 and buying renewable energy. And then who we work with is stewards of the land, of the environment here.
Was that always kind of like a main point of focus for you, is the environment? And how does that like kind of fit into your lifestyle outside of ParkLink?
Living in Hawaii. I mean, before I lived in Hawaii, I never thought about the environment. You know, you move here and you see everybody eating acai bowls and drinking smoothies and walking down the beach with their, it's a different culture living here. And I think it wakes you up about certain things. And one of those things for me was the environment, taking care of it. Even little things like beach cleanups when you're there. Yeah.
How do you then like manage your work-life balance too? Like switching from being now this like full-time business owner to still like having your life outside of ParkLink and de-stressing?
I'm still working on that.
You're still working on that.
I mean, it's like, especially having a home office, it's very easy to work 14, 18-hour days. And, my employees and partners are very dedicated to the company. And I feel like I can't let them down, right? So a lot of the time you end up working through dinner and late into the night. But when work is both fun and profitable, it's very hard to want to do other things, right? I think that when I go out and do these crazy adventures, like flying a stunt plane or roasting a filet mignon over the lava, that's like my getaway from it all, right? Walking through a park would just bore the hell out of me. So I gotta like do something really fun when I do have that time,
So how have you continued? Have you done anything really crazy fun lately that you enjoyed doing?
I was supposed to go do something the week before this, but my sister canceled on me. We're supposed to go fly this plane in Squim, Oregon, where they're on the grass and you learn how to climb in and out of the plane and up onto the wing. And then you take off and you're up in the air and you do the same thing you learn on the grass. So you're up in the air and you climb out of the cockpit up on top of the plane, and then they start rolling that thing and flipping it and all kinds of crazy stuff as you're on the wing. So it's the only wing walking school that's still around in the world.
Wow.
We'll be doing that in a couple months from now.
In a couple months. Are you nervous at all? No.
More nervous here with all these people for sure.
More nervous here.
Yeah.
So how's like your pursuits, like learning to fly planes and like doing all those crazy things? Does it ever interact with like you starting ParkLink or taking kind of those type of risks as well?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think just kind of the risk of starting your own business and taking off from all that is very similar to jumping out of a plane, right? Taking that leap, to be cliche. I don't really know how to answer that.
Do you have any words of advice for those of us that are scared to jump out of the plane or take that leap? I know I am. So
yeah, I mean, you got to think about what do you see yourself doing in 10 years? What do you really want to do? Like, do you really want to work for somebody else for 10 years? All the things that come along with that is consistent pay, killer benefits, recognition. For me, that was a big thing. I'm always been in sales and marketing, and like even at Radio Shack, like I was the guy that sold all the razors, like the old Razor flip phone and like all the Nextel, the walkie-talkies. And Hollywood Video, I was the one that sold you 2 candies on top of your 2 popcorns on top of your 2 movies that you were renting. So having recognition for me early on was very important. And when you break off and start your own thing, all that goes away. Nobody gives a damn. Nobody tells you good job. Nobody tells you you're on track anymore. That was one of the most difficult things for me, is coming from a place where you're recognized by your company, recognized by your peers, to being in your living room with your dog and your cat and like yelling at your dog and cat, we just got another deal. They're like, nobody cares, right? So it's rewarding and scary at the same time.
is there anything you do for yourself to like set goals or recognize yourself?
It's funny. Yes, I had that was the plan. So we got we just closed the deal for Coalina. So we're now the official parking provider for the Coalina. And when I got the signature for that deal a little while back, that's when I called my sister. I'm like, hey, you wouldn't want to like climb on top of a plane and flip it and be on a wing and all that. I knew she was going to say no. And she said, yeah, of course I would. I couldn't believe she said yes. So, yeah.
Doing those things.
Yeah.
So I think we have time for like one more question before we open up to everyone. So where do you see ParkLink in the next 5 or 10 years?
It's a tough question to answer. And the reason I say that is, being like I said, an Elon Musk fanboy, it's hard not to be into the whole self-driving robo-taxi thing and thinking about that in the long term. How long is a business like mine going to be valuable, right? It's going to take a long time to transition if it does happen. And I think right now we're trying to look at repurposing those spaces, because a lot of it goes back to like even back in the 1930s when these laws were made about minimum parking requirements, right? The city got private landowners and they made a law that says you have to build a certain amount of parking spaces for your size business. So you got a lot of businesses that had to build extra parking that don't actually use it. So finding a way to repurpose some of that parking for things like businesses that lost their restaurant during the COVID now have started a food truck. So we have a whole food truck area of ParkLink where people have their restaurant business, right? And thinking even longer term, some of that land, in a place like Hawaii, we got a bunch of free parking and very expensive housing, and we wonder why there's a problem, right? So if you could take some of that land in places like downtown and repurpose it into housing in the long term, 10, 15-year term, right? I think that's what, we would be looking at as a longer term out, 5, 10, 15 years out.
So working towards kind of just repurposing and moving forward with the future.
Yeah.
I know Elon, I saw, just released his self-driving taxi for
Yes,
2024.
2024.
2024.
Yes, you watched the earnings call.
Yes, I saw that. It's exciting, but you don't realize how it will affect businesses like yours or just us driving around. Okay, I think that is our time, right? I believe. Are we at time yet? Okay. We can open up to questions if you guys have any, or anyone online can use the chat or unmute yourself as well.
Tyler, it's great talk. You do have similar demeanor to Elon, I would say. Present. But my question was more about your brand identity, where you guys were as a startup. How did you guys decide to, like, what angle did you take to kind of build your brand, and who's that kind of marketed towards? Then there's a big demographic, especially in the long run.
The long, hard, crappy way. Our first account was taken away by the state of Hawaii as far as the landowners that own that land. So we got a cease and desist order and shut down 100% of our business on February 2nd of last year. And a lot of that went along with locals not wanting to pay for parking in certain areas where they felt it should be not paid. And then we took over another area. It was our new location, right? And we had people out with signs on the news picketing against the paid parking. And so it was kind of a thing. Okay, how do we generate revenue? How do we make people realize that the paid parking in this area is actually good for everybody, but also keeping and garnering the support of the locals? And so for the last 6 to 7 months, I've been trying to develop some sort of program that I've heard other cities talk about, but nobody could accomplish it, was instant identification of different prices for different folks, right? If you go to Miami or something like this and you want a parking permit for a reduced rate, you have to fill out an application, send it in, wait 5 weeks to get the approval back. The city approves it. Then you send in the copy of your photo ID that has the license that matches the area, and you get approved in 5 to 6 weeks. I'm just trying to go to dinner, man. Like, having an instant approval system in a tourism-based economy like this, where somebody has different pricing for out-of-state versus in-state, I think where we're moving towards is more of a, rather than just a traditional parking company, is taking care of wherever that parking is at, right? Right now we're in Hawaii and we're trying to take care of the locals. We want to make it to where locals have a very different rate than people that are coming here to visit. So, I didn't grow up in a place where community was very important, and being here in Hawaii, that's changed how I live, how I treat other people, how I go about my daily life. And I've tried to transition that into the business in the best way that I know that I can. And right now, what our new thing is and what we're doing to tackle that is different parking rates for different folks. So just having a very community-driven idea behind it,
And I think you got a question online from Jessica. It says, Tyler, thank you for your time talking out of your busy day to talk to us about ParkLink. You mentioned before you track supply and demand. Can you explain a little bit more on how you know when occupancy is lower than 30% at a particular location?
Yeah, so the cameras, let's say we have a lot with 100 parking spaces. The camera can look at it, count the amount of cars, or a liaison can count the amount of cars, either way. And we can see 70 cars are in the lot, but there's only 60 reservations. Time to head on over there and place 10 tickets. Pretty straightforward. Same goes on the other side, when occupancy goes up, the prices go up, and that's all done by cameras. And traditionally, cameras are very expensive. You have to run the conduit for the power. You have to pay for the power. You have to get the Wi-Fi. You have to make sure all of that works. We've got a 5G SIM card that pops into a camera that we've taken apart and rebuilt with a solar panel, lasts 10 days with no sun at all. And it's 4K, night vision, There's nothing that we don't have in our cameras that a security system camera does. Everything's saved in the cloud for the last 30 days. I can pop on last night and see what happened at 2 a.m. in space number 12. So those cameras, all back from the day of not being able to feel like I could see what was going on Maui,
Yeah.
has turned out to be one of our strongest points of our whole business, because we also give that access to the property owners, right? So you got to think about, if you own a property and you've never been able to see what's going on at 2 o'clock at night, now all of a sudden this guy turns you onto a camera. It's the two best days of a ParkLink owner or a ParkLink property owner are the day they get their cameras turned on and the first day they get their first revenue check from ParkLink. So the cameras has played a huge part in our business and really set us apart from everybody else.
So speaking of everybody else, good presentation. The first part of the question is competition here in Hawaii. Is anybody else using an app? Is there any obviously there's a lot of parking and obviously competitors, but is anybody else using technology? And then secondary to that is on the mainland where there are other companies with parking apps, how does Parkland compare its features? Is it better, same, worse?
I guess I would say, in the words of Elon Musk, we're vertically integrated. What I mean by that is like a traditional parking. Okay, here in Hawaii, yes, there are other parking apps, but it's just that, a parking app. So I got to download the app when I'm trying to go to dinner. I then have to create an account. Then I have to put in the credit card information. It's a lot of information when I'm just trying to go to dinner, right? Now, a lot of the times, like companies here in Hawaii will partner two of them. So they'll use a local company that does enforcement, and then they'll take a mainland company that does this app payment processing and try and put them together. But the two systems don't really talk to each other. There's nobody else that is doing full integration from top to bottom, that's doing enforcement, lot setup, security, payment processing, digital dashboards. Everybody else has a little piece of the program, but nobody has put it in from top to bottom. And I think that's what we've done differently. It's a lot more work and it's been a lot slower takeoff. But having the ability for somebody to call and say, hey, someone's in my spot. Oh, are you the one in the blue shirt? Turn around. It's a different world than, you know, the parking machine out here that you push the buttons on. First part of your question, what?
How's it compared with any other apps?
That's the same thing. So on the mainland, you know, it's all either payment processing or enforcement. Nobody does it fully integrated from top to bottom, right? There's no companies out there that I'm aware of, and you know, we do our research every day on stuff like this that's doing it from top to bottom, that goes in and says, okay, this is your lot. We're going to go ahead and we're going to paint the lines on here. We're going to paint numbers. We're going to put up aluminum signs. We're going to install the cameras. We're going to turn it on live. We're going to create your dashboard. We're going to have enforcers. They're going to be looking at the tables, and we're also going to have on-site people in an Aloha shirt ready to help out somebody that doesn't have a smartphone, that has an old flip phone, that doesn't know how the technology works. So having everything from top to bottom is what sets us apart from the competition.
We got another online question from Jessica again. Sometimes places are difficult to get to or require extra instructions like weird turns, or GPS sends you to a hard to navigate entrance. How do you account for that? Or do you have plans to incorporate these kind of features?
Yeah, so when you purchase a parking spot, you have two things. We use your preferred map. So when you hit get directions, and let's say you have Apple Maps on your phone, Google Maps, and MapQuest or something like that, you get to choose which one you're going to use, right? So you're going to use the one you're familiar with. Like, I can't stand Apple Maps. I love my Apple phone, but I don't like Apple Maps. So if I'm forced to get directions through Apple Maps, I'm not going to be as familiar as I am with Google Maps. On top of the GPS, there's always pictures of the photo or pictures of the parking spots. So we'll have a picture of, like, let's say I was going to have somebody park here. I would have a picture of the entrance coming up on University Drive. Then you have another picture of the green stalls. You park in the green number, and then here's the machine you walk up to and pay. We'd never do that, but you get the point. Having the pictures in combination with the GPS is what makes it a little bit easier, because especially in Hawaii with like one-way roads and Waikiki, I've had GPS lead me to the wrong place plenty of times myself. But if I had a picture of the drive up and the GPS, it makes it a little bit easier to find that location. Good question though.
Tyler, when you're operating outside of your expertise, especially before you hire other employees, how did you kind of compensate for any, shortcomings of your skills that you weren't able to besides persistence?
And kind of fake it till you make it. I mean, if you go to our website right now, I think it would be hard for most people to believe how that website is built. Every inch of that website is designed on my personal computer, on my laptop through PowerPoint. And it's because I don't know how to use Photoshop. I don't know how to do graphic design. So I design on PowerPoint and then I make it into real life, into HTML. And I don't think that's the normal process at all. I don't think that's what most people do. Just there's a way to get anything. Like there's so much technology and so many YouTube videos out there to get anything done now. If you really want to get it done, there's no reason you should be stopped by any of that. You don't need to have all the answers. And you know what, that's a damn good question, because that was one of the things that held me back. I wanted to make a perfect product before I released it. I was embarrassed, right? I wanted people to see something perfect on day one, launch one. That took 5 years, right? And if I would have just launched it sooner, I would have realized that embarrassment is the price of admission to starting your own business. If you don't put out an MVP, if you don't put out a product that is ready to use, that you're embarrassed about, you waited way too long. I think that you just got to get it out there, make things happen, and then people will notice you. People will take, you go to meetings like this and somebody's going to say, oh, I might be able to point you in the right direction. Like I've been talking to her for 20 minutes before this thing. I have 3 people that I'm about to call as soon as we get out of this meeting. It's just about networking, like telling people what's going on. Don't be afraid to hold your story back. Nobody's going to steal your thing. Nobody cares about your idea. There's millions of ideas out there and none of it means nothing without execution. So being afraid to tell your idea to an advisor here at UH or your friend or your dad's friend that's an attorney, tell them, get people's feedback. Nobody's going to steal your idea. Like you didn't come up with that good of an idea. It's just a parking avenue. So I would say, get your idea out there and don't be afraid to be embarrassed on round one, because that's the price of the mission.
So you collect a whole bunch of data, times when people park, all of their information. What do you do with it specifically?
So let's say we roll out a new location and we're going to charge $1 an hour for parking, just flat dollar. After 90 days, I get to see, okay, what are the peak days? What are the peak times of days? And now I have the data that between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturday nights, obviously, those are going to be when we're going to increase prices moving forward. But what we didn't know is when the slowest times were. So now we take the slowest times and we might put out a early bird special on social media, on Facebook, saying, hey, show up before 10 a.m. and you get your parking at half price. Or kind of work it in with a validation type of thing, where if you buy parking before 10 a.m., you get a free coffee at the local coffee shop right next door. So little type of ways to incentivize low occupancy while capitalizing on high occupancy at the same time. So it's really about finding the best days and times and then adjusting your rates based on that.
What's the biggest challenge?
The day the state placed a cease and desist order on 100% of our operations. Yeah. And then I mean, some of the requests, they'll probably see this, so be it. Some of the requests were absolutely absurd. One of the guys wanted me, he says, oh, go make sure nobody parks in any one of those 500 spots that we just took away. I'm like, oh, okay, so you want me to go stand in like 500 parking spots and tell people, no, you can't park here, and run to the next, no, you can't park, no, you can't park. But they made me. And so having to try and tackle a situation between attorney general and state and cease and desist and whoa, I went to Crestview Elementary, my mascot was a cougar. I'm just a person, this is all movie stuff. I don't know how to handle an attorney general of the state of Hawaii and what to respond to him. I don't know. I mean, That was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And I thought the business was absolutely overdone. Our reputation would never come back. But then we got another phone call and somebody wanted to sign up. And we get another phone call, and then you reach out and make another phone call. And, you know, some of them were that was definitely the scariest time. And now we broke through all that. We are now the largest digital parking provider in the state of Hawaii. We have almost 100,000 customers here. And, you know, last year we grew by 980 some percent. This year we're on track to do another 650%. So when you think it's over, it's not over. You just got to keep trying sometimes, you know. Don't let them scare you. If they're scared, you're onto something, right? Has anyone watched the recent series called Super Pumped? It's the story of the rise of Uber. Every person in this room, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you got to watch that series. It is, oh, it's so good. I mean, he's a total jerk. He's a total jerk. And by the end of the series, you don't like him. But the first 3-4 episodes leading up to the rise of Uber, it's so inspiring what this guy did. I mean, the city, everybody was trying to shut him down. And he just plowed through them all and kept going. And watching that, going through what I went through with the state in Hawaii, you know, I got choked up on like 3 of the episodes. I'm like, I know that right there. Yeah. They're freaking scared, right? So there are, here in Hawaii, there's something that I didn't know existed. Did you know that people can own roads in Hawaii? There's private roads in Hawaii, bunch of them, 700 of them. They're all over the place. Now, if you own a road, there's liability that comes along with that, right? Somebody trips, falls, has an accident, stuff like that. So you got to carry insurance. So a lot of these people that have roads, it's a liability to them. And some of those folks want to find a way to turn that liability into a profitability, right? Without getting into too much detail, the state has the power that if you have a private road and you don't do anything for 5 years, the state can take that road back from you. And some of the property owners that we were working with, the state claimed that they had no rights of ownership for the last 5 years. Those roads got taken back and now belong to the state of Hawaii. We had no idea about any of that. We're trying to do a parking business. I went out and personally painted 500 parking stalls line by line with a little T-bar. I mean, like, it's ridiculous. I got 2 pieces of scrap wood from Home Depot when we first started out. They were like 80 cents each. I nailed them together to make this little T-bar stencil. And I went out with some latex yellow paint, got from Home Depot, started drawing a T in the middle of the street. And then I went and made another T and then painted a little number. And now we had a little parking lot. Like, that's how it all started, right? So going out and painting 500 spaces is not easy. Like, I didn't have a paint machine. Like, I had a paintbrush and a stencil, right? And so the day that they took all that stuff away, that was months and months and months of work taken away and all the revenue of the business taken away. And it was absolutely devastating. And again, I thought everything was done, but sometimes you get lucky and you keep pushing through and it works out, you know? But yeah, that's how it happened. And yeah, if you know anybody with a private road, let me know.
Where was your first stall?
In Waikiki, right by the zoo, stall number 1. I remember it because the person I was working with that day painted the one upside down.
Oh.
And I was like, that's our first parking stall, dude.
It's in the zoo park?
No, across from the zoo, right in Waikiki. And that stall is still, we've repainted that area several times, but we will never touch that one. That one stays upside down for the rest of Park Link. Yeah, that was our first stall. And I remember, like, we'd painted those stalls and we put up the signs, and we hadn't launched yet. We just painted and put up the signs. And then we were painting another location a couple blocks away. And I remember hearing this weird sound on my phone that I'd never heard. It was like, bing, bing. What was that? I go to look at my phone. A freaking Parklink reservation. Whoa, somebody put their credit card in the thing. Like, we didn't even launch it. They went up there. Like, there was 18 steps to booking parking spot. You had to go to the app store, download the app, create an account, and you had to put in all this information, like your first, your last name, your address. the color of your car, the make, the model, the year, like who cares about all that stuff? There's so many steps to book your first parking spot. And I could not believe that somebody put in their credit card number after going through all that. And later that night, another ding, 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 and the next day, ding, 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 and it just kept more and more of those bings. And it was like, holy crap. I mean, these people are like putting their credit card number in here. It was amazing when it first started out. You know, the first few credit card bings of somebody trusting a program that you built and it's out in the public, out in the wild, like there's no better feeling. It's incredible. Incredible. And then when I got the cameras on, sorry to go back to this, but then I remember the first day I got the cameras on over in Maui, and I remember looking down on the camera, I'm like, that person's paying, and that person, and that person. And like you could see all of them at once. And like it was the first time when I hooked up all my cameras at my location. I had been used to sitting in the lot and like staring, but I hadn't been used to seeing everything at one time and realizing every one of these cars in the camera is trusted us. And that's an amazing feeling.
So unfortunately, that does bring us to the end of our program today. So thank you again to everyone for attending and for First Insurance Company of Hawaii for making this speaker series possible. We look forward to seeing everyone hopefully at our next event on May 12th. And for those of you at Zoom, thank you for joining us from your homes or wherever you are. So we're going to end the meeting now. And the rest of us here, please feel free to stay with one another. We can network and enjoy some refreshments from Case.